guys to do their iris for a couple minutes.
Do your own iris for a couple minutes, Mike. Good luck. I think that'll work, Barry.
I need to find you a small.
Okay, here's 15, 15, 15. Check, Mike 4. Mike 4, 15%. Mike 4, 15%. Loud race car, loud race car.
Let it come down more. Fuck, it's still cranking.
Is your pad?
It says Mike low.
Oh, well, shouldn't.
So right now,
There shouldn't.
Oh, I figured that was. Go high, see if that changes it.
And And good morning and welcome to race number 2 of the 2024 season for the Emzone Radical Cup Canada, presented by Michelin. I'm Dave Bradley. Joined with me in the booth is Pat Gonsalves. But race number 1 had a bunch of twists and turns, and potentially race number 2 could play out the exact same way. One of the most significant incidents that happened in race number 1 was your race leader, Kenny Reedman, who had about a 6-second gap at the front of the field. Unfortunately, got tangled up wrong place at the wrong time with a lap car of Alana Carter, who unfortunately looped it in turn number 5. The two cars came together and Reedman's race was done. That opened the door. Owen Clark picked up the win in dominating fashion. He had a great run behind the wheel of that number 55, his second career victory in race number 1. The rest of the podium in the Emzone Radical Cup Canada Championship, Travis Hill and Mark Boyd. Of course, this is the first year for the Masters Championship as part of the Emzone Radical Cup Canada Championship, and Tim Sanderson, first time. He'll mark his name in the history books as the first ever winner of the Masters Championship, picking up the win there. So Daniel Earl and Peter Burgess coming home second and third in the Masters class, but the fastest lap from race number 1 sets your grid position for race number 2, and that's where we're about to get into. And as I mentioned, there's lots of storylines. If this is your first time seeing Radical cars on track, they are definitely unique vehicles and fast. You have to underline that aspect of it as well, because about 230 horsepower, only 1,365 pounds. They'll reach a top speed of about 235 kilometers an hour at the end of the back straightaway. It's a 1340 cc engine powering these machines with a 6-speed sequential gearbox. And the most important part, they have tons of downforce. They're essentially a smaller prototype vehicle. And the harder you push them, the better they stick to the ground. And that's what makes these cars so exciting. But as we mentioned, a class within a class with the Masters and the RCC running together. So you can tell the difference. The Emzone Radical Cup Canada group running with a black number panel, white number, and the Masters class has the white number panel with the black number. But the field lined up 2 by 2. It will be Kenny Reedman and Owen Clark. That's your front row. And it's actually Mark Boyd in the 12 as they lead on to the front straightaway. And see the green flag, and we are underway. It's a timed race for the Emzone Radical Cup Canada Championship.
They work down into turn number 1. Kenny Reedman will see whether or not the repairs to that car were done absolutely perfectly, as Reedman starting from the pole position. We thought, Dave Bradley, that perhaps we'd see Kenny take a shot at the track record he established here last September on Labor Day weekend, but for the most part, the weather conditions up until this morning have not been ideal for track records as they run this opening lap. This one's scheduled to go until 11:10, so a 40-minute run for the Emzone Radical Cup Canada Series cars. And of course, if you're here at the track for the first time, Kenny Reedman for many, many years raced sport bikes and super bikes and has made a tremendous transition over the last 3 years to these Radical Cup cars. Year 1, he was 4th in the championship, runner-up a year ago, and right now, coming into this year, felt he had a real good shot at the championship, but it looked like he was on his way until everything came unglued at Moss Corner late in the race yesterday.
Sanderson is a guy that we've talked about in the past who has run several different disciplines here at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, so he knows how to get around. Currently sitting in second behind the 42 of Kenny Reedman, and of course finishing on the top step of the podium in the Masters class yesterday. 3rd on track, so he didn't back his way into that one. And if you're wondering the difference, what is the difference between the cars on track? Nothing. It's just the age of the driver that is the only difference. So Masters class is for drivers who are 40 years old or older, and it's sort of seen as more of a gentleman's class, but it's really not, because when you talk to the drivers, they want to fight for wins as much as anybody else on the track.
Off the end of the Andretti straightaway, down through turn 9, your race leader, Kenny Reedman, in car number 42, has stretched it out here. Battle going on for second between the 07 car in there, that is Tim Sanderson, and the 55 of Owen Clark as they work down into turn number 1. And it looks like Kenny Reedman looking to check out on the rest of the field here early. Will get a lap time on the race leader, but I believe that is already at least into the minute 22s as Kenny Reedman works his way down through turn number 3 on his way. A gap opening up to the second place car of Tim Sanderson in the 07, and then 55 Owen Clark, who won that opening race here yesterday with a big margin, almost 40 seconds over Travis Hill in car number 22, who came home second, and then Mark Boyd rounding out your podium.
So again, we've got some issues with timing and scoring, so we're just trying to get as much information for you as we can. But we can tell you as Kenny Reedman comes through 9 and 10 and onto the front straightaways. Opened up a bit of a gap as Clark now has managed to track down the 07 of Tim Sanderson, and Mark Boyd now in a battle with the 22 of Trevor Hill. Now Trevor Hill in race number 1, one of the biggest movers and shakers. He improved 4 positions from his original starting spot and came home 2nd overall. So definitely a good run behind the wheel of the Tooth Spotify 22, and now he's starting to move forward once again, sitting in 5th overall on track in that battle. Mark Boyd, and just in behind is the 7 of Chris Stiles, who had a very eventful day in race number 1. As a matter of fact, ended up backed into the wall in turn number 8, going for a spin. Minimal damage there. They managed to get it all fixed up, but Kenny Reedman, as we mentioned, another driver who had some issues, and that car was on the scales very early this morning. I got here just as the paddock area was opening up, and most of the repairs had been completed on that 42, and it seems as though they did a very good job.
Kenny Reedman on the Andretti straightaway, stretching it out. That 07 car of Tim Sanderson, your Masters class leader, being pressured down by 55. Owen Clark as they work into turn number 8. Clark within about 3 or 4 car lengths as they come off at turn number 10, and on the start-finish straightaway. We'll get a lap time here on Kenny Reedman. At least we hope we're going to get one. He is your race leader ahead of Sanderson, then Clark, and then the battle for 4th and 5th overall involving Mark Boyd and the 22 of Travis Hill.
Tough to find a battle you want to watch, because you've got that battle for 2nd overall with Sanderson and Clark. That is super tight, and then just in behind, it's that 3-way dice between Hill, Boyd, and Chris Stiles. So they're all nose to tail, but that dice there for 2nd overall, Sanderson and Clark, super tight at the line as they continue. And Clark, again, a relative youngster and a relative newcomer to the Radical Cup Championship here in Canada. He missed the first 3 events of 2023, but still managed to finish 4th in the season standings. So, and he finished with a win in his rookie year as well on the streets of Toronto, and then of course backed that up here in race number 1 with a dominating win in the Emzone Radical Cup Championship here in Canada. So don't count out that 55 as we continue to click off time here in this timed race for the Emzone Radical Cup Championship.
Kenny Reedman off at turn 10. He is really stretching it up inside as Owen Clark will take over 2nd, and then we've got that 3-way battle going on for the 4th place position as they go through. Your race leader, Kenny Reedman, ahead of Owen Clark, 07. Tim Sanderson in 3rd. Mark Boyd, 12, holding on to 4th. Travis Hill rounds out your top 5, and then it's the 7 of Chris Stiles in 6th. 7th is 30, Stephen Chen. 8th is 39, Daniel Earl. 9th is car number 9, John Painter. And then Masters class driver Robert Burgess rounds out your top 10 here at the moment. 11th is the 77 of Brady Clapham. 12th is 16, Alana Carter. And then Liang Q in car number 3 runs back there in 13th. John Sobel in the 70 car is the 14th and final car on the racetrack.
So Reedman continues to open up a bit of a gap here at the front of the field. And here comes Owen Clark down through 9 and 10. Now Travis Hill has managed to catch the back of Tim Sanderson in the 07. So him and Chris Stiles have managed to get around the 12 of Mark Boyd. And Travis Hill now working his way forward in that 22. And that's similar to what happened in race number 1. We saw a bit of a slow start from the driver in the 22, but again, a veteran as he's racing in LMP2 in the U.S. this year, dabbling into that for the first time, and of course, winner in the TCA class in the FEL Sports Car Championship Canada, presented by Michelin in 2023. So he's no stranger to victory lane. He's just getting a handle on these radical SR3 cars and figuring out how best to use them. But definitely a bit of a slow start, maybe a little cautious in the early going, and then really turns things up as he's doing just now. And starting to track down that leader group as Tim Sanderson has mirrors filled with the 22.
That 70 car of John Sobel just went through here. He is the last car running here on the lead lap. Here's your race leader, Kenny Reedman, back through turn number 10. He is just disappearing from that battle that's going on for second, actually for third and fourth now, as Owen Clark, 55, has cleared off from the battle between the 07 of Sanderson and the 22 of Travis Hill, who runs back in the fifth place position. Then Mark Boyd, followed by Stephen Chen, John Painter in ninth, and up into eighth now, Daniel Earl is ninth, and Robert Burgess, the second of the Masters class drivers, rounds out your top 10. The fastest lap of the race, well, it belongs to Kenny Reedman, a minute 20.946. It came on lap number 2, and we believe this is the fifth lap for Kenny Reedman, as we're still having some issues with our timing and scoring. But Kenny Reedman continues to power away out in front, opening up a big gap there on 55, Owen Clark.
Yeah, so significant battles all over the racetrack in the Emzone Radical Cup Championship presented by Michelin. But again, a race within a race, because you have the Masters class mixed in with the championship car. So we can tell you in the Masters class, and just going through who is where. So Tim Sanderson, and again, we're just dealing with some issues with our timing and scoring and trying to figure it out as we go. But Tim Sanderson continues to lead in the Masters class, and then we look back to Daniel Earl, who sits second in the Masters. Robert Burgess right there, just in behind the driver of the 39. So the 2 car sitting in the podium position as far as the Masters class is concerned, and that's how they run on track. But again, a championship within a championship that we're watching, but a very good 3-car battle on track right now, as we get a great shot from our drone. There's Owen Clark sitting in second spot. So he's managed to gap the car behind and sort of settle into a rhythm. And this is what we saw yesterday in race number 1 before Kenny Reedman ran into his issues involving a lapped car. So the 42 would set a fast lap, and then the 55 would sort of slowly chip away at that race lead that was built up by Kenny Reedman. And then Reedman would lay down a cracker of a lap and build it up once again. So it was really much a cat and mouse, a back and forth between the driver of the 42 and the driver of the 55. But Kenny Reedman soon to be coming into lap traffic as the 70 of John Sobel. So a car that looks very much like the 55 of Owen Clark. Teammates, as a matter of fact, Owen Clark drove that car for the majority of last year. But Sobel will be one of the first to be seen by the leader.
Battle on the start-finish straightaway as 77. That is the Brady Clapham Emzone sponsored car closing in here on Robert Burgess in car number 2. That is a Masters class driver, Burgess, who right now at the moment is third among the Masters class competitors. So still working on our timing and scoring monitor. That's a little bit of a shuffle right now. 42, Kenny Reedman, your race leader, ahead of 55, Owen Clark, the winner of race 1 yesterday. 22, Travis Hill in third. 07, your Masters class leader, is Tim Sanderson. Then rounding out your top 5 overall is Chris Stiles. Then the 12 of Mark Boyd in 6th. 30, the orange car, Stephen Chen runs 7th. 9, John Painter is 8th. Daniel Earl in car number 39 runs 9th. He would be 2nd in the Masters class. Rounding out your top 10 is the 2 car of Robert Burgess. He is 3rd in the Masters class. And then looking at the rookie Brady Clappin coming out of the karting ranks, he is running 11th in the Emzone sponsored car.
And there you can see Tim Sanderson still holding off Chris Stiles. Now, as we mentioned, Stiles having an issue in race number 1, but gathering it back up. And Stiles was inside the top 5 when he went for that spin in turn number 8 yesterday and damaged the car just a little bit. Not too significantly, but unfortunately sat up against the tire wall for long enough that it eventually ended his race. The number 9, John Painter, the only Aussie in the field. You can see the Aussie flag on the side wing, the winglets on the side of the rear wing on that car. So everybody else is a Canadian flag. John Painter has an Aussie flag, but he had some issues yesterday too. A lazy spin in turn number 5 that sort of ruined his run. He was moved up well within the top 10 behind the wheel of the 9. Plans to do a full season, driver of the 9 this year too.
Well, that 07 of Sanderson is leading that quartet of Radical cars up the Andretti straightaway. And then you've got Painter in car number 9 trying to make it a 5-way fight for what would be the 5th place position as they come on around. I believe our lap count here on the timing and scoring monitor is off. Kenny Reedman has completed a whole lot more than 7 laps out there, but he does have the fastest lap of the race, a minute 20.946. And we'll check the margin back here now to Owen Clark in car number 55. That continues to grow. And then we look at that 4-way battle moving up out of turn number 2. Sanderson 07 with that 7 car of Chris Stiles all over his rear wing. And then also part of that quartet is the 12 car of Mark Boyd, and then that orange number 30 of Stephen Chen as they work back down through Moss Corner. These 4 cars very equally matched as they draft up out of 5B and head up the Andretti straightaway. And we come up on about 16 minutes into this 40-minute run, the second of our Emzone Radical Cup Canada races this weekend.
And Sanderson, 23 races if you count yesterday, entered in the Radicals. So he knows what to do to keep drivers behind him when he may be off by just a little bit. And that's all he is. The 07, just a little bit slower lap after lap than the 7 of Chris Stiles, as Stiles continues to hunt and try to make his way around the driver of the 07. But Stiles is actually of the age where he could be potentially racing in the Masters class. He's opted to race in the General Championship. That's the difference. You see the white number panel in the 07 of Tim Sanderson and the black number panel of Chris Stiles, as Stiles gets a good run off of turn number 2. He pokes the nose looking to the inside. Turn number 3. And again, that's a difficult position, but they're going to come into lap traffic in just a second. John Sobel in the 70 is just ahead. He pulls to the inside. So some heads-up driving by John Sobel and good sportsmanship there to see the faster cars, acknowledge the blue flags, and leave lots of racing room for them to get by. So they'll stay in that 4-car train as they head to the Andretti straightaway. Mark Boyd and Stephen Chen, the other 2 cars in that train behind the 07 and 7. But can Chris Stiles make it work? They do pick up a draft down the Andretti straightaway, so they'll get that little bit of suction from the car in front of them. But there's not much lifting in turn number 8. That's the thing, is you don't have a good opportunity to outbrake the driver in front of you into turn number 8. Essentially, you float the throttle a little bit, talking to some of the drivers, and then you get back on it. Turn number 9 does have some braking, some downshifting. Turn 10 is another passing opportunity if you want to try and make it work. And then turn number 1, you're back into a flat-out corner.
And Dave Bradley, that 9 car of Painter, desperately trying to get up there to join that quartet of cars that we watch come off at turn 2. And they're as close as they've ever been. The 07 of Tim Sanderson holding off Chris Stiles in car number 7, and then 12, Mark Boyd right there. And then that orange number 30 of Stephen Chen. But looks like Painter running right about on the same pace, but has not been able to make up any ground as they exit 5B. And now up through the gearbox as they clear 5C and that long climb up the Andretti straightaway. But out in front, Kenny Reedman continues to dominate as he did here yesterday until that incident at Moss Corner, getting into contact with Alana Carter. And Carter right now running just outside of the top 10, I believe in 12th at the moment.
And you can see how tight they are from the drone shot in through 9 and 10 and on to the front straightaway once again. Again, this is a battle for third on track, on back. And Tim Sanderson currently has it. Stiles, Mark Boyd, Stephen Chen, and John Painter not too far adrift from that group. One driver we haven't really talked much of is the 77 of Brady Clapham. He was pretty quick yesterday at times in the Emzone backed entry, so he's sort of working his way up through the field right now. We're a little bit mired in traffic, but there is your race leader, and that gives you an idea of the gap that Kenny Reedman has been able to build up on the 55. There is Owen Clark just coming into your screen, and Clark is going to have some company fairly shortly, and that company is named Travis Hill behind the wheel of that 22.
And I believe Travis Hill is starting to reel him in, and then we've got a big gap back to that four-way fight that's going on among the 07 of Sanderson, the Masters class leader, along with 7 Chris Stiles, the 12 of Mark Boyd, and the 30 of Stephen Chen. As the clock shows here, we come up on the halfway point, little over 20 minutes gone by. They have completed, I would think, somewhere in the vicinity of about 15 laps. So the lap count on timing and scoring, I think, is just a little bit off from what we got earlier. But Kenny Reedman is your race leader. And then the 16 of Alana Carter, as we said, running back in 12th. And then the 3 of Liang Q, and then 70 John Sobel, the last car on the racetrack, in 14th place.
There's Owen Clark there, and the gap back to 3rd place, Travis Hill. And you can see little differences in the cars, and there's many options for body work and for even safety, because you see that front roll hoop on the 22 of Travis Hill. So that's an add-on that's available to these drivers. You can get the body work with the rear fin over top of the engine cover. So that's another option these drivers have available to them if they want to go in that direction. It's really fascinating if you start diving around through the Radical website and learning about these cars and what you can do to them. But essentially, the basis and the chassis is all the same. And it's just options that you may think might work a little bit better as Mark Boyd takes a peek at the end of the Andretti straightaway into turn number 8 on the 7 of Chris Stiles. Not quite there. That might just been a rattling of the chain trying to fill the mirrors of Chris Stiles and just get him thinking. That's drivers will do that. They'll play games with each other, try and get in each other's heads. And you take a peek so the driver takes a look and maybe makes a mistake, because at this point, these 4 drivers, none of them are that much quicker than the driver in front of them to make a power move. They need a mistake to happen to help them out.
Well, those 2 drivers who are chasing that quartet that are running 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th, 8th place runner John Painter, and then 9th is Daniel Earl. They're running laps slightly quicker. So if this continues the next few laps, we could have 6 cars fighting for that 4th place position. There you can see them just coming down the chute and up into Moss Corner. They clear 5B, that 07 of Tim Sanderson, the Masters class leader, running 4th overall behind the cars of Kenny Reedman, Owen Clark, and 22 Travis Hill, but they're a long way back from those front-running 3 cars. But Dave Bradley, this is a superb multi-car battle, and there you see Painter just inching closer and closer. He can see those cars ahead of him, and that is the motivation to perhaps go a little bit deeper into the corner, and then not too far back is the second-place Masters driver. That is the 39 of Daniel Earl, who was second here yesterday in the Masters class. That's the green Radical, also closing here. So we may have a 6-pack of Radicals coming up here to battle for that 4th place position overall very shortly.
Yeah, the drivers who are chasing are loving this tight battle in front of them, a 4-car battle, because it's allowing them to inch closer. John Painter with the yellow rookie stripe on the back of that number 9. So he's really in school here. He's learning a lot from these drivers in front as far as fast racing lines and what to do in the draft to try and catch and close the gaps here at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. It's a very, very quick track here, and you really have to use all of your racing knowledge in order to make a pass, as Stiles gets a great run out of 5B up alongside the 07 of Tim Sanderson, and this might be the opportunity that he needed as they go side by side down the Andretti straightaway. Not for long, as Stiles is going to complete that pass.
Side by side between those 2 cars. Here is that 07 of Tim Sanderson trying to take him back on the outside. Cannot get it done. So it's the 7 of Chris Stiles who has moved up into that 4th place position. Sanderson still your Masters class leader, running 5th overall. And then the 12 car of Mark Boyd in 6th. 7th is the 30 of Stephen Chen. And then car number 9, John Painter, is just about caught that quartet of Radical cars. And shortly we're going to have a 5-way battle going on for what is that 4th place position. But it looks as though Stiles now trying to check out on the rest of the drivers in that group.
And Stiles was quicker than the 07 of Tim Sanderson. There was no doubt about that. He wasn't significantly quicker. He needed a little bobble, and he got it on the exit of 5B, and that opened the door to let him get by. But that's the difference. Now, a couple tenths a lap is going to open that gap significantly. Mark Boyd, he won't want to be left behind because, again, these 2 drivers, the white number panel on Sanderson, the black number panel on Mark Boyd, they're essentially racing in different championships here this year, different classes on track. So yeah, they're racing each other, but not necessarily racing for the same points. Sanderson is happy to sit there. He's going to defend as much as he can. Nobody wants to let anybody else go by, but Mark Boyd is going to desperately need to get by if he wants to keep close with Chris Stiles and try and keep up towards the front of the field. No pressure right now on the 42 of Kenny Reedman. We've been playing this game before, though. Yesterday was the same. Kenny Reedman had opened up a huge gap on 2nd place Owen Clark, and then unfortunately got caught up with lap traffic. As a matter of fact, right about here is when he did manage to get some damage to the right rear corner of the number 42. Fixed it overnight. That car is very fast, but he'll be extra cautious, you could say, when he's maneuvering through lap traffic. And it was just a racing deal. We have to underline that. It was nobody's fault. It was just a racing deal. Both drivers talked to each other. Both were bummed out for each other. Alana Carter, unfortunately, went for a loop in her first race and then just backed up a little bit as Kenny Reedman was going by. Now Reedman working around the 70 of John Sobel, who goes way wide and has to slow down considerably. But Reedman still navigating lap traffic, and now coming up on the 3 of Liang Chu, and that's another 2th Autosport backed entry. So Travis Hill is not only racing these cars, but he's also helping other drivers in the field, and Liang Chu is one of those drivers.
And he is about to get lapped by Kenny Reedman, as here is Reedman. He'll dive in on the inside into turn number 3. So that is going to put unofficially, I think, 12 cars on that lead lap as Kenny Reedman continues to power away out in front. That fastest lap of the race came early on lap 3, a minute 20.946. And then since then, Riedman's been running a very comfortable pace at 1:21, 1:22 seconds, depending on if he's had to deal with traffic. And as he climbs the Andretti straightaway, you can see that Owen Clark, blue, yellow, and white car in second, but he's still under pressure from the 22 of Travis Hill. As Hill continues to close, we pick up on the battle that's going on here for fifth, involving the Masters class leader Tim Sanderson, just ahead of the 12 of Mark Boyd. Chen is right there, and now Painter has definitely joined them along with Earl. So once again, we got a five-way battle for what is fifth overall, with the Masters class driver 07 Sanderson leading that group.
Most importantly for Painter and Earl, that's nearly draftable. So they'll get a whiff of the draft down the Andretti straightaway and get that little extra pull to help them close that gap even more as you take a look second place and third place. So that distance between those two drivers, Owen Clark and Travis Hill, is starting to shrink just a little bit as they continue to maneuver through lap traffic as well. And Owen Clark is really caught up behind Liang Chu and opens the door. So once Liang Chu opened the door for Clark to go through, it was almost too late because Travis Hill, he really sucked up to the back bumper. So what once was about a 1 second lead is now probably just a couple car lengths.
Well, he wasn't as courteous to Owen Clark as he was to Kenny Riedman earlier, and that has allowed that car of 22, Travis Hill, to close right up on the 55. Now here's Stephen Chen. That orange
Painter with a big slide up in turn number 5, in between 5A and B, and to really grab some wheel and gather that car back up. I believe he did, but he did lose one position. So Daniel Earl managed to sneak around in the 39, and importantly for the three cars in front, the gap now grew to those last two cars in that 5-car train. So Earl really has to get on his horse to try and track down, because Earl and Sanderson are racing in the Masters class. So that is for championship points. And if Earl can get up there, he'll want to attack on the 07.
Well, I think that cost Earl some time as Painter got into that big slide after closing over the last few laps to catch these three cars that worked down into turn number 1. And then as we check the clock, we've got less than 10 minutes to go. And that battle for second and third really heating up. Out of 5B, 55, Owen Clark clears turn 5C. And now the climb up the Andretti straightaway. There's only about 3 car lengths separating those two drivers. And undoubtedly, this battle is going to go right down to that final lap before they decide which step on the podium they're going to stand on at the end of this one. But up front, Kenny Riedman, as dominant here today as he was yesterday. Unfortunately, he got caught up in that incident in Moss Corner that cost him a lot of championship points. But they have rebounded here today with an absolutely flawless run.
Yeah, so that's Boyd once again shadowing the 07 of Tim Sanderson, unable to get through. The 7 of Chris Stiles has opened up a significant margin, about a 3.5-second gap ahead. So once he managed to get through on the 07, he really set sail and left this group in behind. Of course, Sanderson is playing a little defense, so he's not going to run his optimum lap times. And he's trying to keep the 12 of Mark Boyd in behind. Stephen Chen is just waiting to see how this all plays out. So he's sort of in the catbird seat in that orange number 30 towards the tail of this line. He's waiting to see if Boyd opens the door, if he can sneak through, or what happens. There may be contact, you never know, as Boyd goes to the outside and then back down low, down into turn number 3. So he's starting to look for different ways to see where he might be a little bit quicker, because he knows the clock is ticking and time is no longer on his side.
Well, that Masters win here is still up for grabs, as at 07 of Sanderson, 1:23. But the second place Masters class driver, Daniel Earl, 8th overall, was 1:22. So he's actually made up some ground on the leader in the Masters class, Tim Sanderson, who runs 5th overall and is under pressure from the 12 of Mark Boyd and that orange 30 of Stephen Chen as they crest the hill into turn number 8. Things really starting to heat up for 5th, 6th, and 7th. Meanwhile, Robert Burgess has just turned his fastest lap of the race. He is running 10th overall and 3rd among the Masters class drivers. 11th is the rookie 77 Brady Clapham in the Emzone car. 12th is Alana Carter as that battle for second heating up out of 5B.
Now, once again, it is very tight. So it was less than half a second the last time they crossed the stripe. And once again, Travis Hill is well within striking distance down the Andretti straightaway. So as he tucks in, you can see him almost right behind. So trying to get as much of that draft as possible headed towards turn number 8. The problem in these cars, or I guess the benefit for the drivers in these cars, is that there's so much downforce that turn 8 is really not a hard braking corner. It's a difficult one to make a pass into if that's what your goal is. So you're sort of setting up for turn 9 and turn 10. At this point, Owen Clark has been very, very good in getting through those corners and keeping the 22 at bay. And that's essentially what he has to do. He got caught up in lap traffic. That cost him the gap that he had built up over the 22 of Travis Hill. And now he's just got to hit his marks and do everything perfectly to keep Travis Hill at bay. But Tim Sanderson still with mirrors filled with the 12 of Mark Boyd and the 30 of Stephen Chen. And now Daniel Earl has managed to catch that group as well. So Earl took advantage of a little bobble by the 9 of John Painter to get through. And Earl has been quick. So now, once again, it was a 5-car battle, then down to a 3-car battle. Now it's back up to a 4-car dice.
And Earl was about a second quicker than that group that he's trying to chase here on the racetrack, diving in on the inside.
Oh, that's ambitious from Boyd, and he does back out, but he tried to stick it to the inside. Sanderson gave him lots of racing room down there, but the outside momentum lane, and you can see losing that momentum might cost the position. It doesn't. Boyd manages to hold into turn number 5, but turn 4 side by side with Stephen Chen as this battle heats up.
And Earl is right there. He has caught that group. Painter, after that miscue a few laps ago at Moss Corner, has also moved back up. So it is 5 cars up the Andretti straightaway, and 2 of those are the Masters class drivers. We've got a battle for the win after Sanderson won it pretty handily here yesterday by over 22 seconds. They worked down through turn number 8, pretty much flat out through the right-hander. And Earl with a little bit of a different racing line, but he is right there. That Masters win up for grabs between the 07 of Sanderson and the 39 of Daniel Earl, who for several laps now has been running quicker in that bright green car. And then Painter still trying to play catch up in car number 9. He is running back in what would be the 9th place position.
Yeah, just in behind this group, as a matter of fact, there's a great battle going on between Robert Burgess and Brady Clapham in the 2 and the 77. So they're having their own battle just in behind. But as this group slows down, battling with each other, again, that group of 2, you see them at the top of your screen coming in there. They're starting to slowly close that gap. So this could even become a bigger dice as we tick down to the final few minutes. But we can tell you at the front of the field, Owen Clark has turned up the wick. He's closed the gap on Kenny Reedman by just a little bit. It's now under 5 seconds. Matter of fact, 4.5 seconds as Clark has decided to go. So Kenny Reedman might be backing off in the later stages, just sort of protecting that lead, but it is getting closer at the front.
Last time through here, it was about 4.5 seconds. Reedman's last lap was a little bit slower than Clark. As we wind it down here, showing just a little over 2 minutes to go. We'll watch the flaggers stand here for when that last lap board is going to come out. But Kenny Reedman now almost 5 seconds clear of Owen Clark, who has got his mirrors filled with that white 22 of Travis Hill. And then our focus of attention for much of this race has been that multi-car battle going on for 5th, including the race for the Masters class win here.
Yeah, it's almost been for second place Owen Clark that he sees the pressure from the 22 of Travis Hill, and he's really upped his game to try and keep Hill at bay, and he manages to do so by about the 10th of a second of a lap over the 22, but it sort of elevated his game as we've got 1 lap to go, a last lap board for the 42 of Kenny Reedman as he works through turn number 1 for the final time. Again, Owen Clark now has lost a little bit to your race leader. So as we talk about Kenny Reedman, maybe saving his stuff, slowing down a little bit, there he goes. He lays down a cracker of a lap and opens up another 0.7 of a second over top of the lead he had already built up on the 55.
Well, that was another quick 1:21 lap time for Kenny Reedman. Looking at this fight here as the 12 car of Mark Boyd continues to put the pressure on Sanderson. And then there is Earl. He's got a lot of ground to make up here with less than a lap to go if he's going to try to catch Sanderson for the Masters win. But Sanderson right now looks to be in pretty good shape, trying to double up with both Masters class wins here this weekend.
How about this rebound from the 42 of Kenny Reedman? He comes into this one with the most points in series history. And yesterday, not a very good points day at all. Finished outside the top 10, but you knew that car had speed, and you knew the driver could do this as Kenny Reedman works his way through turn 10 for the final time on the front straightaway. He will see the checkered flag. The win in race number 2, first of 2024, goes to the driver, the 42, Kenny Reedman.
Well, I think unofficially he becomes the very first individual to win a Superbike and a Radical Cup Series race here at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. As the battle that had been going on, I think that's just coming through the final S's. There's Owen Clark finishing second, 22 Travis Hill in third.
Now we're watching for the Masters Championship to be settled, and it will be the 07 of Tim Sanderson leading, and he's gapped a little bit on that pack in behind, but the green and silver 07 will see a checkered flag for the second time this weekend. First 2 races, first 2 wins here in 2024 in the Masters Championship for Tim Sanderson. And what a run there, what a race by all of those drivers in that mix. Daniel Earl will come home in second, but a big congratulations goes to the driver, the 42, Kenny Reedman. Solid points weekend for the 55 of Owen Clark, and Travis Hill will round out the top 3. For Pat Gonzalez, I'm Dave Bradley. Thank you very much for joining us as part of the Emzone Radical Cup Canada presented by Michelin here at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park.